Hi, thanks for joining me on this course series about following the truth wherever it leads. And yes, it is about the existence of God and the truth of Christianity, as I believe it to be. And the premise of the course is I intend to look at things from a very logical and scientific methods and see what the most logical conclusion for an honest, open-minded person would be. But before we start, I need to step back a little bit. You see, the reason I'm doing this is I've had people very, very, very close to me decide they were atheist. And it was very, very troubling for me because I've grown up all my life. I don't ever remember not having a deep faith in God. Reading the Bible almost every day since I was 12 years old. And for a Catholic, that's rare. But when this happened, it caused me every morning when I got up to say my prayers, it caused me a lot of stress and anguish. It was just so troubling and difficult for me. Probably the most difficult thing I still experience. And so I needed to know the truth. And when you're in that situation, I needed to know the real truth. If atheism was true and Christianity was false, that would make my life very, very much easier because I wouldn't have to worry about these people. And believe me, it is exactly what I wanted to have happen. No doubt about it, that's what I was hoping for. But if that was not the truth, then I wanted to face the truth, because if Christianity was true, or any other religion was true for that matter, there may be eternal consequences, both for me and the people I love. So the option of just believing what was comfortable simply was not there. So I took about 6 months, buried myself, and I can consume a lot of information into reading books on both sides of the subject, in watching debates, in thinking, and reading the entire Bible from cover to cover again, which I've done many times. So it was, but looking at it differently. So, and finally one day I'm sitting at my kitchen table at 4 o'clock in the morning, and there was simply no getting around the conclusion that for an open-minded person, especially the scientific discoveries of the last 50 years simply made belief in anything except the existence of God patently absurd. It just didn't fit with the scientific discoveries. And not just that, the philosophy and the logics, it just didn't work. It didn't work at all. And it did work. Christianity did work. And I knew it was true. I knew for sure it was true. And then I was flooded with guilt because the living Lord Jesus that I'd known all my life, I felt terribly guilty for having ever doubted for 1 second that he existed. So, but it was clear that I'd been led on that journey for a reason. So now I'm passing on some of the things I'd learned. And this is not a fancy course, okay? And I am not a theologian. I'm just a normal guy passing on what I learned and what I experienced. And there's a couple of things about this particular course. It is designed to be as short as possible, all right? I'm not covering anywhere near all the subjects that I covered. Personally, I'll add to that later. And it is, because of its brevity, yeah, it leaves a lot of arguments untouched. But that's, I intend to create a second course that touch on those things, all right? And also, this particular course is primarily designed to get you to understand what it is to seek the truth. Why the current, especially scientific community, is missing the truth, and so obviously missing it. It's designed to help you understand the power of bias and to recognize it in yourself and others. It's designed to help you be logical, okay? This is not designed to be a fun course to make you feel good about your religion. If that's what you're looking for, you're in the wrong place, because we're going to touch on some very uncomfortable things, okay? So my basic hope from this course is that you will learn to follow the truth wherever it leads, all right? And the truth isn't here to make you comfortable, all right? Truth is very uncomfortable very often. The truth isn't here to make you popular. It's very likely to make you very unpopular. Galileo was very unpopular when he suggested that it was the Earth traveling around the sun instead of the sun traveling around the Earth. The truth isn't here to make your life easier. Most of the time when you face the truth, you'll be forced to take some actions that don't necessarily make your life easier. That's okay. That's not really my concern with this course, all right? So we're going to start with the O.J. Simpson trial. I don't know if any of you remember this. It depends upon your age, but a famous football player named O.J. Simpson was arrested for the murder of his ex-wife and her boyfriend. They were both found stabbed many times, okay? During the course of the trial, a lot of evidence came up, and the trial was one of the first trials that was published or broadcast on TV, so a whole lot of people could watch the trial, and there were excerpts on the news and on TV shows every night, okay? So let's look at that particular trial, because this trial is an example of the power of bias to overcome truth, and that's what we're going to talk about. Okay, so here's the bloody evidence. O.J. Simpson's blood was found at the scene of the crime. The odds that it was not O.J. Simpson's blood was 1 in 170 million. The blood of Ron Goldman, that's his ex-wife's boyfriend, Nicole Brown, that's his ex-wife, and O.J. Simpson were all found in O.J. Simpson's Ford Bronco. That was the vehicle he was arrested in, by the way. Okay. The left glove found at the crime scene had the blood of Ron Goldman, Nicole Brown, and O.J. Simpson on it, and it matched the right glove found at O.J. Simpson's house. There are photographs of O.J. Simpson wearing that brand and style of glove. Shoe prints found at the scene and in O.J. Simpson's Bronco were a rare type of Bruno Magli shoe, size 12, which is exactly what O.J. Simpson owned. Only 299 of this brand and model of shoe were sold in the United States. Nicole Brown's blood was found in O.J. Simpson's socks, which had over 20 stains of blood. And the blood is a rare type that only 1 in every 9.7 billion Caucasians would have, and considering there aren't that many Caucasians in the world, Brown was likely the only Caucasian alive with that type of blood. Okay, now, this is something about this course I failed to tell you earlier, but a lot of the course was designed for a live class presentation and to have live interaction, and it has a lot of questions in it. The questions are usually in red, and I'm given live, you know, I get solicit answers from the crowd, which we obviously cannot do in this situation. I'm going to pause a little bit for you to think, but in order for this course for you to really sink in for you, you're going to have to pause the video from time to time and stop and think. Don't hesitate to do that. Just pause the video. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, and think for yourself a little bit. You might also want a yellow pad or a notepad of some type so you can take some notes. Maybe even write down your answers. It would be a wonderful thing to do. Not required, obviously, and there's no test, but it's something you could do. So, back to the presentation. Did the scientific evidence prove O.J. Simpson was guilty? Well, I have a tendency to say yes. I want to say yes. But in reality, that's just simply not true. Science, or at least forensic science, doesn't say anything. Scientists do. And if you think about it, that's absolutely true, all right? There are two types of science in reality, broad categories. There's material science, natural science, and forensic science. Material science is things that can be repeated in a controlled environment. In other words, you take hydrogen and oxygen, you make water. You can do it over and over and over again. you can pretty much prove that hydrogen and oxygen make water. That's how it works. Forensic science is different. You look at evidence from a past, unrepeatable event. Obviously, we cannot repeat the events of the night that Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman were murdered. It was an unrepeatable event. And then you use reason and material evidence to come up with a logical theory about what happened. This type of science, forensic science, requires that a person collect evidence correctly, put forth a logical, sound interpretation of the evidence. Okay? Science, in this case of forensic science, it can be a witness, but it cannot say so-and-so is guilty or not guilty. You simply cannot prove it, period. Okay, so forensic scientists say things. They put forth claims and theories. So, the jury, believe it or not, despite all that evidence, found O.J. Simpson not guilty. 10 years later, NBC takes a survey, and the survey found 77% of people thought Simpson was guilty. However, 87% of whites thought he was guilty, and only 29% of blacks thought he was guilty. Now, I want you to think about this a second. I'm not bringing this up because of a racial thing at all. I'm saying we have the exact same evidence put forth to two separate groups of people who came to radically different conclusions. Somebody looked at the evidence completely different than somebody else. So, how did black and white Americans come to such different conclusions? Well, consider the worldview of black Americans. Think about it. We have a long history of racial discrimination. We can't argue that. Many are taught to expect racial discrimination. Many strongly hold the opinion that police officers and judges are racist. And they probably have experienced that or believed they experienced it to some degree or another themselves, personally. The police had both, so they came to the conclusion that the police had both the ability and the motivation to frame the black O.J. Simpson. You couldn't blame them. I mean, but they looked at the evidence from a completely biased point of view. Now, if the truth be known, if you consider the worldview of white Americans, chances are they looked at it in a very biased point of view too. It's just that their biased point of view happened to line up better with the science. If you took all the bias out and you looked at it strictly from a scientific point of view and you assume that the evidence was collected well, etc., then it's difficult to come to a different conclusion than that O.J. Simpson was guilty. But the point is, were the survey responses decided by truth and logic, or were they decided by a predetermined bias? In the 1600s, Pascal, fantastic philosopher, said people almost invariably arrive at their beliefs not on the basis of truth, but on the basis of what they find attractive. That is so true. All right? And that's why we have so much bias, and that's why logic and reason don't always win the day. Matter of fact, I'll put forth that I think the majority of the time they don't win the day. People refuse to believe something no matter how logical or reasonable it is if it makes them uncomfortable. They just won't believe it. All right. So, now we're talking about truth, and we're going to talk about truth a lot. So, what truth is not? Okay, let's get a few things straight about what is and is not, what truth simply is or is not. And we're going to start with the not. Truth is not what you believe. Okay? It is perfectly possible for you to believe that 2 + 2 = 5, but that doesn't make it true. You can believe anything you want to believe. You can believe in unicorns. You can believe that pigs fly. It doesn't matter. You can believe it with all your heart. You can believe it that everyone goes to heaven. You can believe whatever you want, but that has nothing to do with truth. They can be completely unrelated. Truth is not your perception. Okay. You are going to be told all the time that truth is simply a perception. But think about this. Let's say you and I are having a pillow fight, and I wish I had, because when I give this thing live, I actually have a pillow, okay? We're going to have a pillow fight. Well, my pillow that I have has concealed within it a ball bat. All right? You perceive it as a pillow. You believe with all your heart that is a pillow. You think we are having a genuinely innocent pillow fight. But the thing is, when the truth of my ball bat comes in contact with the reality of your face, your perception that that is just a pillow won't make any difference whatsoever, all right? Truth is not a perception. And you are probably going to hear this argued about. I've seen college philosophy teachers argue that we can't really know for sure that the chair we're sitting on is really there, because if our perception is strong enough that it is there, it'll hold us up anyways. What a load of hogwash, all right? Call it like it, see it. That's not true, all right? Truth is not a perception. Truth is not relative. You're going to hear this all the time. Well, that may be true for you, but it's not true for me. Truth is relative. No, it's not. First of all, the statement that truth is relative is a self-refuting statement. If you ever studied logic or know anything about logic, this goes back to at least Augustinian times. The idea that for a statement to be true, it has to be able to stand up under its own weight. So if we take the statement truth is relative and we apply it to that statement, the statement truth is relative. If that is true, that means that that statement is false, at least sometimes. Therefore, it cannot be a true statement. It must be a false statement. Truth cannot be relative. It's a completely self-refuting statement. Think about it a little bit. It goes in a bit of a circle. If that statement is true, that means sometimes it is false. And if sometimes it is false, that means it is not true. Okay? So, truth is not relative. The other thing is, you're going to hear examples of this. Somebody's going to say, well, you know, it obviously is relative because I say this room is cold and you say this room is warm. Well, that's not an example of truth being relative at all right? If I believe the room is warm, it feels warm to me, then the truth that this room feels warm to me, that is true for me. It is also true for you that this room feels warm to me. And it is true for everyone else who I say the statement to, as long as I'm not lying, that this room feels warm to me. If you say the room feels cold to you, it is true that the room feels cold to you. It is true for me that the room feels cold to you. It is true for everyone else that the room feels cold to you. To compare the fact that you say it's cold and I say it's warm, those are not the same statements. We're not talking about the same thing. It is not a relative or connected statement at all. They're two completely unjoined statements. So, truth is not relative. And you'll find that other people would put forth similar arguments, and you can take them apart the same way. Truth simply is not relative. All right? And lastly, truth is not hidden or obscure. If you have a question about what I mean by this, you can go read the fable by Hans Christian Andersen. It's called The Emperor's New Clothes. It's a wonderful example. But truth is really very obvious. And we need to trust our common sense science. For example, if you go to a restaurant and you order a bowl of alphabet soup, and when the soup is set before you, you look down there and the letters, the noodles, that form the letters, you look down at them and they spell your name and address. Are you ever going to believe that they just randomly scoop that bowl of soup out? It's unreasonable. You know it. You can look at that and you know somebody back there arranged the noodles to spell your name and address. It's obvious, okay? If somebody wins the lottery, there's 33 state lotteries. If somebody won all 33 state lotteries on the same night and bought only one ticket in each lottery, you know they had it rigged somehow. You may not know how, but the truth is they had it rigged and you know it and everyone else knows it. Okay? The truth is extremely obvious. And we need to learn to trust our common sense science. Stop being bamboozled by just because somebody's real smart and they use big words doesn't mean they're honest. It doesn't mean they're being honest with themselves, and it doesn't mean that what they're saying is true. You can almost always simply look at something and you know if it's true or if it's not. All right? So, we need to learn to call it like we see it. We need to have enough guts to call things true or not true. Now let's think about that analogy of the alphabet soup, okay? You're served a bowl of alphabet soup. The letters are all arranged to spell your name and address. And now imagine that you decided ahead of time that you absolutely refused, under any circumstances, to believe that there was an intelligent being arranging those letters in that bowl. What possible explanations can you come up with for your bowl of soup? If under no circumstances will you believe that an intelligent being arranged those letters on purpose, then how can you explain your bowl of soup? Multiplication of possibilities. The only other possible explanation is that they poured out billions upon billions of bowls of soup, and you just happened to be the one who matched up with the ways the letters fell into it. Now here's my next question. Is that reasonable? Is that an unbiased search for the truth? Seriously? The reason you make that conclusion that they had billions and billions of bowls of soup is because you refuse to believe the obvious. I'm saying take a chance. Believe the obvious. Okay. The scientific community believes in randoms, things happening randomly, okay? We are comparing the ability of something to happen based on intelligence as compared to randomness. That's what we're going to talk about, okay? So, before we go on, we need to discuss a little bit about what a difference intelligence makes. Imagine you have 10 poker chips and they are numbered 1 through 10. You put them in a hat. Every 15 seconds you blindly draw out the 10 chips, put them back in the hat, and draw again. Question: how long would you have to repeat this process before it would be statistically likely that you would draw them out in the order of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. In other words, draw all 10 chips out in that order. Take a guess. You would have to do it day and night, non-stop, for 1 year, 8 months, and 25 days to have a statistical probability that that would occur. Day and night, every 15 seconds, for a year, 8 months, and 25 days. Now, think about this. If you gave those same 10 chips to the average 5-year-old and you asked him to put them in order, how long would it take the 5-year-old to do it? Less than a minute. Well under a minute. That's the difference intelligence makes. It's huge. So when we look at things and we start seeing these compounding of possibilities, think about how difficult it is to believe that that is the way it occurred, and how simple it is to believe, you know what, it looks like intelligence. But I will never make an argument for a God of the gaps. That means I'm arguing as in, we don't know, so therefore it must be God. That'll never escape my lips in this presentation, okay? So, my challenge to you, be honest with yourself. No matter how bad it hurts or how much you have to change. Be truly logical. No matter how much it hurts or how much you have to change. And follow the truth wherever it leads. No matter how bad it hurts or how much you have to change. That's my challenge to you. Okay, so why am I so sure that this approach of following the truth will lead you to Jesus? And yes, that is my goal. You don't have to do that, and I'm not going to be obnoxious about it or anything like that, but Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And when he was speaking before Pilate and multiple other places, it says, you say that I'm a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me. All right, we're going to stop there. When we come back, we're going to start looking at some common sense science examples. Thank you.